This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data, and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Josh Wetzel, CRO at OneSignal. Josh, welcome back to the Business of Apps podcast.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great, thank you for coming. Okay, look around. Wherever you're listening to this episode, many products you can see have three people associated with it: consumer, marketer, and developer/builder/designer. You get the point. So hence the following questions are always involved. What does the consumer want? How to make sure the product is what the consumer is looking for? And how to build the damn thing to meet those needs. In today's episode, we're welcoming Josh back to talk about consumer-driven app development. Josh, you were in the show last year, but for folks who did not listen to that episode, please tell us about you and OneSignal.
Yeah, thanks, Art. So I've got a 25 plus year career in kind of consumer tech, internet. I was born and raised, got hit by the lucky pitch, so to speak, to be born and raised in Palo Alto, California. I grew up actually a few blocks from Steve Jobs. It was a pretty idyllic upbringing, and I don't take it for granted any single day. And I've been fortunate on the career side to have a nice experience across. I started off in marketing roles, but worked in all sorts of areas: e-commerce, product search, ad tech. So helped build kind of the leading kind of initial builder of programmatic advertising on the supply side, a company called PubMatic. So I've had a really nice career being exposed to a lot of different models. And now at OneSignal, for those of you who aren't familiar with OneSignal, it's a customer engagement platform. It's currently installed in approximately 1 in every 5 new mobile apps in the iOS and Android App Store. So huge adoption. We support over a million businesses across the globe. We're delivering about 12 billion messages a day. We really started off as a mobile game studio, actually, and we pivoted to support being a tool provider about 7-8 years ago. And we started off really focused on push and in-app messaging, so really mobile messaging. But in the last 4 or 5 years, have built out email, SMS, and then orchestration. And so company's grown quite a bit, and it's been an awesome ride. And it really is nice to have these conversations with people that are building new innovations, or companies, quite frankly, that are pretty scaled, that are trying to figure out, the world is shifting, where we've gone from a desktop-centric world to a mobile-centric world. What does that mean for me, and how can I maintain and grow my user retention and loyalty? So it's been an awesome ride. Yeah,
so definitely impressive neighborhood and impressive data point, the stats about what you do at OneSignal. I suppose you have kind of a similar perspective, like, guys from app analytics world, they get the chance to see what's going on the macro level in the app ecosystem. You guys are in touch with so many apps that are part and parcel, like the core of that app ecosystem, and you get a feeling like how does it feel like for all those apps, because they're communicating so many messages through your platform. You kind of see the information flows going through OneSignal. 9 billion messages.
It's about 11. It depends on the day of the week, but I think we're averaging north of 11 billion a day now, and we've had spikes much higher than that. But yeah, it's a lot.
Way more than folks on this planet. Yeah, that's a big number. Yeah. As of things stand today, from the consumer perspective, how would you assess the impact of the economy on mobile apps today?
It's a great question, and we could probably spend hours on a podcast talking about why or how. Or I see it, both as a consumer, but also in my role here. There is a decline in the efficacy of user acquisition due to some of the things happening with the app targeting. And then costs are just rising in general, right? So consumer price index or core inflation are growing essentially across the globe. I think we just had a new reading here in North America or in US, and Europe had one last week. And so things may be stabilizing, but they're still very, very high. And what ends up happening for the consumer, and you see this in the app marketplace, is, apps that were heavily relying on ads are having to move more towards a consumer paid model. You see it at the high level, right? What is Twitter trying to do? Twitter's literally trying to get its consumers to pay and shift away from, not exclusively away from ads. And so we're seeing that, and we're seeing a big rush. I think an area that's undervalued, underrated, but I think it's growing quite a bit is subscription-based services. So tools that plug into OneSignal, but they're really driving the cadence of how do I get someone to hit that inflection point to pay for a subscription or buy something, because on the app side they're desperate for it. On the consumer side, which is really what you asked about, it's you can see it in all your just general services. If you're paying for Netflix, like how many times has that gone up in the last 18 months? Disney Plus. And these are obvious big brand, but these are things that a lot of people are using or paying for. I know milk, for example, is up significantly. Eggs is up. So these things are just having an impact across the board, and I think everyone's having to try to charge a little bit more. So it's rough.
Yeah, that's for sure. I never imagined that one day Netflix will start offering a plan with advertising in it, because to me, Netflix was kind of like the best example how the online service should look like when it comes to subscription. Like it actually comes to my mind even more often than other previous examples like music or dating apps. So when I think about subscription apps, Netflix is in my mind, and thinking that right now you can go with the plan that is required for you to see some ads on Netflix. That's to me is a signal that the things are really shifting in the consumer app space. And even Apple increased the pricing for their one plus, or I don't remember the name of the package, but these. Yeah,
the bundle service. Yeah,
that's
right.
No, I mean,
we're
$30
seeing
now.
we're seeing across the board. I'm even seeing Gmail is now really enforcing its limits. So people have been using Gmail for a long time, or transferring a lot of large files, and they're trying to get consumers to pay there. I know I've been going in and deleting like old files because I'm getting close to that 15 gigabyte limit. But yeah, no, it's across the board, and I think it's forcing us to be more thoughtful, right? I think you used to download tons of apps and you'd play around with them, and you may start using them, you may not. I think it's going to be more incumbent on, and consumers can just get a little bit more picky about what are they actually committing to, and actually putting something on their credit card statement. They'll probably be more thoughtful about, because we're sort of getting this exhaustion of subscription services. So
exactly, there are only that many hours in the day to watch stuff on your subscription services. There's no way you can subscribe to every possible media company these days and still being able to sleep. Should be thoughtful in both, like how much content you're consuming and how much money you're spending on those apps. What are your thoughts on the role of marketing in all this?
Want to improve your app marketing skills? Know how to fight back mobile fraud? Or how to launch an influencer marketing campaign? You've got it all at the Business of Apps Insights. Opinion, how-tos, thought leadership, and analysis from global app and social media industry. Visit our Insights section at businessofapps.com/insights/podcast. And now, back to the show.
It's a great question. I think that, marketers are, well, there's a couple key things, and one of them I'm biased on, and I'll tell you why I'm biased, but also I have firsthand experience. Most of my career has been at this intersection of, from a discipline standpoint, sales, business development, and marketing. I've always thought of myself as a marketer, and a marketer in the sense of, how do I acquire a user? How do I, or a business, if I'm in a B2B business like I am at OneSignal, how do we develop that awareness? how do we get somebody's attention? How do we get them, convince them of the value and the impact we're going to have? How do we deliver on that impact, right? And a marketer's job ultimately is to be the tip of the spear to that, from awareness to long-term success and regeneration of that business. However, what I think is we've found this, and I've seen this firsthand in my career, marketing's role, the overweighted amount of the budget and the attention and resources goes to acquisition. And we are getting to a point where I firmly believe there aren't that many new users coming online, right? As people cycle out, due to death and birth, like those are new users, but most of the planet now is connected. And so all businesses need to be more thoughtful about, I can't just reacquire, like I'm just reacquiring the same people. Like if I've already used your service and decided I didn't like it and I canceled and I moved on, you have to reacquire me. But that's really what you're looking at, right? That's where we are with, like, say, mobile phone companies, right? Where there's kind of battling each other. And so I firmly believe marketing needs to do a better job of investing in that understanding of how do I educate my existing users and the users I am still acquiring, because acquiring is still very, very valuable. But how do I create a lifecycle program that's truly delivering an education and ultimately growing that person's engagement with my business? And that's one of the reasons, but I'm passionate about what we're doing here at OneSignal. There's gonna be many companies that are successful in this space, but helping provide tools that give a cohesive omni-channel conversation are going to be critical to be able to maximize the retention of the users you're acquiring and already have, and ultimately in driving much better engagement and loyalty of those users. And if you look at the most successful businesses out there, that's what they're doing, right? And it's interesting, you brought up Netflix. We could spend 10 minutes talking about Netflix, which I don't mean to do, but I think there's a great example where them adding the ad component, I think, was a big mistake. And the reason why it was a big mistake was because they went against one of their core principles and the DNA, but they did it because they were a publicly traded business and they realized they were like, oh, we've got to say something that drives interest from Wall Street. And so they kind of hastily threw that together, put it together. And I don't know if it's the best customer experience. It may be long-term that, like, there's a tier of customers that would rather pay $6 a month and get ads, and that's fine. But I thought they did it not necessarily because in the best interest of consumers, but they did it in the best interest of Wall Street. And we'll see if that ends up being the case. But anyhow, long story short, I think marketing needs to be much more holistic in how they think about the consumer. They need to have more stake in and drive metrics around retention and loyalty. And they need to be thinking about acquisition, still important, but you have to be thinking about how long do I retain and grow the loyalty of that user. And if you look at most marketing departments, vast majority of the resources are focused on acquisition. So I think that's why we're here where we are, is because most of these businesses have churned through a significant portion of the people they brought into the product. And now they're in a situation where they've kind of introduced themselves to everybody, but they give a poor experience to a certain percentage of them. So.
Exactly. I totally agree, totally on the same page with you, Josh, about this step on the Netflix side. Like, I didn't think that Reed Hastings would one day accept the idea of advertising the platform, but yeah, we'll see. Pretty much, I guess, within a year or two, how it's going to play out. Will it pan out the way that it was, described and developed as a plan, as the to please the Wall Street, as you say? Which to me is always not an option. You should please your customer. Like, the way that Apple does it, I love way more than other folks. That's why Apple just recently reported 2 billion install base and 935 million subscription users. So, but again, just like you're saying, unless we start, going interplanetary and find people on other planets, we're still stuck with people on this one, the ones that are connected, the ones who have means and already have a smartphone in their pocket. You can switch them between the one provider to the other one, probably just like, switchers between iOS and Android and back. But that's not an option for everybody. For many people, they have to really, really think hard how they can build a long-term relationship with their customers. Yep. Because this is like the sustainable model. Let's talk about the apps on the business side. What are the challenges and solutions for this part of the app ecosystem? again, how marketing can help with these challenges?
Yeah, it's it's a great question. I think on the business side, we're moving, and again, I'll be the first one to admit, and the caveat of like, we are a product-led growth freemium product, and that's one of the reasons why we have so much scale. One of the things that excited me about OneSignal and why I joined was I believe we're moving towards a place where you have to provide some level of value. You need to provide trial. So I think on the business side, it's super critical that you've got some ability to give somebody some value before you're asking for, pay, until you sort of asking them, forcing them to make a decision. Now that's on the enterprise software side, particular, or really large business kind of app world. That's sort of thought of as blasphemy. Why would I do that? It takes away some of the what do I call it, the value, if you will. It's harder to charge. But I think that's crucial. And I think we're moving to a world where people expect it. And it's partly because every service, the internet started this trend. I remember having a conversation with the multiple CEOs ago of New York Times. This was in the early 2000s. And I was working at another company. We were structuring a content distribution deal with them. I was at CNET at the time. And I asked them, why don't you, if you're giving away all your content online free, why don't you give away the physical newspaper for free? And it's like, why would I do that? And I was like, well, it's effectively the same thing. And their thought was, well, we're going to collect everyone in the world and we'll give it away for free. That's created this mindset, though, where consumers in a business profession feel like, hey, I want to be able to try this before I'm going to pay for it. And so I think marketers, they need to be pushing their products to be more open and giving some value up front to attract people, because I think consumers in our business lives expect that more often than not.
Got it. Okay, let's take a kind of holistic look at marketing in general. And this is one of those, crystal ball questions I'm asking. What do you have any predictions for this year? Hopefully none of us can see the future, but based on your experience on the trends you can see, how you can project them throughout this year, what do you think is going to come?
Yeah, on the marketing side, it kind of touches on what I mentioned earlier. I think we're going to see an acceleration, but still minority of businesses moving towards a holistic conversation with consumer. What that means is they're tying multiple channels together instead of having disparate kind of email and these other solutions. And they're going to do it because it's more efficient. It's a much better customer experience. And ultimately they drive better retention and loyalty from that. And a bunch of studies have shown you're going to get 200+% LTV increase by tying multiple communication channels together. I think on the back end, people get a lot more smart about, how do I tie information so I can make better decisions on who I'm targeting in ads? So what's the true consumer? What are the signals that matter? And they're going to get more focused on how they're targeting people, because at the end of the day, we had a lot of mechanisms that were kind of they weren't black box, I shouldn't say. Like if you were doing ad retargeting, it's not really black box, right? Like you came to the website or you download the app. I'm not going to follow you around and continue to reinforce my message until you've converted to a sale. Those things are increasingly getting more difficult. So I think my prediction would be that people are going to start getting much more focused on how do I really target places, ultimately audiences that I know are places where my consumer, like people that are going to be buying my product or engaging with my product, are. And then they got to get much more focused on, how do I drive better customer retention and loyalty of the people I do already have and the people I am bringing in. Otherwise, it's just getting too expensive. You can't do I'm just going to put all my money into UA and I know I'm going to leak 99+% of those people off.
Yeah, this is definitely not sustainable strategy to see that leakages, to just be okay with that. Now, lately, I like to ask this question every guest on the show, which is this: Josh, is there something about your field you would really like to change? Like, the stuff that makes you pause and you would really like to change that thing, but you just don't have a capacity, you're not in a position to change it, but you would really like things to be different?
Yeah. It's a great question. I love it. I would go back to why I love what I do, and quite frankly, why I love technology. Every day is new. Everything's evolving. So there's things that I could say, hey, I want to change this. But the beauty of it is, if I truly feel passionate about it and I have an idea that's going to improve it, I go start a business and I prove that it's better. And ultimately, I make that difference. I think every industry and every evolution, if you think about it, that's exactly what's happening. So one of the things I love about it is things that I think are wrong, I either go invest in or I go try to work on them. So I'm at OneSignal, quite frankly. I saw that this need to have one, I saw the value of push, like it's real time, it's really integrated. It's an extension of a product or service in the mobile environment and in the web environment. And what keeps me excited is the fact that we now have this omni-channel experience that's so much better than just email only, for example, or disparate systems. And I'm someone who's bought email marketing programs at like basically 4 of my last 5 jobs, and I had to implement them and I had to use them, and they are terrible. They're not integrated into CRM well. So anyhow, point being that I could call out stuff, but I think at the end of the day, when there are things that you feel passionate about that are true problems, there's some entrepreneur, someone thinking about that, and they're solving it. And that's what keeps me driving. It's just like seeing all this cool stuff happening. I think the AI stuff is crazy. I'm sure you're having a lot of conversations about that. I would call out that there's going to be so many fundamental changes from that. I think this shift is greater than post internet, in the sense that it's going to fundamentally change how a lot of us do our jobs. It's going to improve and make us more efficient in ways that we can't even imagine. It's going to up-level a lot of work. We already are seeing it within OneSignal. We use it in a lot of different small capacities to make things way better. So that's an exciting thing for 2023 that we're going to see. I think we're going to exit this year. One, everyone's going to say AI this, AI that, right? Everyone's going to redefine themselves as AI companies. But put that aside, I think the actual tangible benefits will be real. And we will look back in 2024 and be like, well, that's amazing how much stuff has shifted in 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's always this, component of hype where it's just unavoidable that lots and lots of small companies have been trying to push the AI as just the selling point of what they provide. But, the number of that 100 million people are using ChatGPT right now, and it's just not feasible psychologically to comprehend the whole scope of applications that can be actually fruitful this year and and on. So yeah, we'll see how ChatGPT will be transforming the industries, the jobs, our life, starting with Google and Microsoft.
Yeah,
I'm kind of betting myself who's going to be first to actually launch the service, not the beta, not the presentation, but actual service, and how it's going to impact publishers. That's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We could spend a lot of time talking about that. It kind of goes back to the earlier thing we were talking about ads versus having consumer paid. I do think we're shifting over where consumer paid will be important, will be something that's kind of cornerstone for all publishers. And then the ads need to get much more, the value of every visitor is going to be really high, basically. And so we're going to have to find mechanisms to like validate that so that, a publisher can charge the appropriate amount of the value being created. But there's going to be a rough patch, I think, as this stuff rolls out and the ecosystems and haven't been kind of recalibrated, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before I let you go, just a very final question. How can people get in touch with you and get more information about what you do?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at jwetzel. So it's JWETZEL. And same thing, jwetzel at onesignal.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I've on every social service, but those are the ones that I primarily engage in. So feel free to reach out. And Art, I really appreciate being on the show. It's great to see you. I'm happy you're doing well, and looking forward to continue the conversation in the future.
My pleasure, Josh. Thank you. It's great you're still on Twitter, not quitting it.
I haven't quit. It's crazy there. It was a pretty fun and entertaining show though, there in like November, December. But no, I'm still on Twitter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending time with us again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that was Josh Wetzel, CRO at OneSignal. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps, and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe, and you'll be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.